I never believed in nothingness, the concept of a true void, complete silence, absence of light, the absolute lack of anything, felt too abstract to be real. As someone who's worked in telecommunications infrastructure for over 20 years, I've dealt with blackouts, dead zones, even signal anomalies. But those were glitches, technical hiccups. What I experienced in 2019 during an inspection assignment near the abandoned Trenton relay facility wasn't a glitch. It was something else, something terrifying. It started with a routine maintenance request. The relay station had been decommissioned for years, yet a distress signal had been logged by one of our satellites, flagged as originating from its location. Odd, but not impossible. Curious, and with nothing urgent on my schedule, I decided to investigate myself. I didn't even tell my wife. What was there to tell? I'd be gone 2, maybe 3 hours. Driving to the site, I couldn't shake a strange tightness in my chest. The road was familiar but felt unfamiliar, as if I was trespassing in a place time forgot. When I reached the chain-link fence, rusted and buckling, I noticed it had been forced open. The gate hung crooked on one hinge. I remember frowning, muttering, "Kids or vandals," under my breath. But I was wrong. So very wrong. Inside, the station's outer walls were smeared with soot and covered in vines. Windows shattered, doors left ajar. It was eerily quiet. No wind, no birds, just the crunch of gravel under my boots. I made my way to the main terminal room, a vast, decaying chamber filled with dead monitors and broken equipment. Then I saw it. A single monitor still glowed faintly in the back, flickering like a candle about to die. The monitor displayed a single line of text. "It watches." I blinked, then chuckled nervously. Probably some prank, I told myself. But why was the monitor powered at all? There was no electricity in the facility, no backup generators. I tapped the keys, no response. I tried powering it off. Nothing. I leaned in to look closer, and just then, the screen blinked off. A cold draft swept the room. I turned around quickly. No one. That's when I heard it. A sound so subtle it was almost imperceptible. Not a voice, not even a whisper. More like the absence of sound shaped into something that wanted to be heard. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand, but the beam seemed weaker than it should have been, as if the darkness in the room absorbed the light itself. I tried to leave. Really, I did. But the corridor I entered through wasn't there anymore. In its place was a narrow hallway, one I hadn't seen before, extending into pitch blackness. I backed away. This had to be a trick of the mind, I thought. Maybe the building had shifted, or I'd taken a wrong turn, but the hallway pulled at me. Not physically, mentally, like something was waiting. Against every instinct I had, I stepped inside. With each footstep, the air grew thicker, heavier. My breath became labored. The silence was unbearable. Not just an absence of sound. Something was pressing against my ears, my mind, trying to erase thought itself. That's when I started hearing them. Voices. Not loud, not whispering, but unraveling. As if memory itself was being spoken back to me. My mother's voice, my childhood laughter, the sound of my wife humming in the kitchen, all twisted slightly, subtly wrong, like poor imitations. I yelled, begged whatever was doing this to stop. My voice echoed weirdly, returning not as sound, but as pressure in my skull. I ran, or tried to. The hallway bent, shifted, pulsed. Angles didn't make sense. I turned left and somehow ended up where I started. A figure stood at the end of the hallway, tall, faceless, almost shimmering like heat waves. I froze, my limbs locked. The void wanted me, not to kill me, but to make me part of it. I woke up hours later, or maybe days. Lying outside the station, face down in the dirt. My car was gone. My phone, dead. I walked for miles before I saw another human. I didn't speak about what happened. How could I? It didn't make sense even to me. But it didn't end there. The void followed. It seeped into my dreams, into quiet moments when I'm alone. I hear the static buzz just before it whispers. I haven't told my wife, haven't told anyone until now. If you're reading this, don't go to the Trenton facility. Don't respond to the silence. It knows when you're listening. Weeks after the incident, strange things began to happen around the house. Lights flickering, radios turning on by themselves, the television flashing static at exactly 3:13 a.m. At first, I chalked it up to stress-induced hallucinations. But the timing, the precision, it was too exact. I once woke to find all the mirrors in the house covered in condensation, yet the air was bone dry. And then came the knocking. Gentle at first, barely audible, not at the door, but from inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the drywall one night and almost screamed. It wasn't knocking, it was breathing. Shallow, rhythmic, and undeniably human, yet no one else heard it. I installed cameras, sensors, anything to prove to myself I wasn't going insane. One night, while reviewing footage, I froze. A black figure, no face, no definition, stood at the foot of our bed for hours. I checked the timestamp. Neither my wife nor I stirred. We were both asleep, oblivious. The next morning, I found a single word etched into the wood floor by the bed. Return. I asked my wife if she'd done it. Her confusion was genuine. I knew then the void didn't want me to escape. It had let me go. Temporarily, I sought help. Psychologists, paranormal investigators, priests. No one could explain it. One expert, an older man with sunken eyes, listened silently, then asked a single question. Did you respond when it first spoke? I had. His face turned pale. He said, "You weren't supposed to acknowledge it. That's the contract. It's listening for a response. That's how it enters." Now I live in near constant noise, always keeping music, news, chatter around me. Silence is the enemy. Even in sleep, I use white noise machines, but it's getting stronger. It's learning. Last night, despite every device running, I woke in silence, and I could feel it breathing against my neck. I don't know how long I have, but if you hear it, if the silence begins to twist, to press, to whisper things you once knew, don't answer, don't think, don't listen. Nobody in the neighbourhood had really noticed when the house at the end of Foster Lane went vacant. It had never been a loud house. No music, no barking dogs, not even the sound of a lawnmower. Just a small, old structure with faded green paint and ivy clinging to its sides. When Vincent moved in, he didn't know it had been empty for almost a decade. The real estate agent had simply called it a quiet opportunity. He was a 46-year-old logistics consultant from Chicago, worn down from years of corporate travel and silence in hotel rooms. The house felt like an escape. It had an old-world charm. Vincent liked the silence at first, but silence, when stretched too long, begins to twist. And within just a few days, Vincent began to notice things that pulled at the corners of his awareness. There were no reflections in the hallway mirror at night. He chalked it up to bad lighting, maybe old glass, but it gnawed at him. The mirror worked fine during the day, but once dusk crept in, the glass turned into an empty pane, swallowing light and showing nothing. One night, after waking from a nap on the couch, he heard his own voice whisper from the hallway, a chilling, perfect mimic of a phrase he'd muttered before falling asleep. "I need to get out more." He froze. The whisper didn't echo. It didn't come from a person. It just existed, as though the house itself was repeating his thought. Vincent tried to dismiss it. Stress, isolation, maybe he was cracking. But the next day, the hallway mirror showed something impossible. His reflection standing still while he turned his head. Not a trick, not a lag. The reflection just didn't follow. And when he looked back, heart pounding, it snapped to match him again. Neighbors started avoiding eye contact. One old man walking his dog crossed the street when Vincent waved. A week later, Vincent found a note stuck under his door. Just one sentence, hastily scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Whatever you do, don't open the second door." There was no second door, he thought. Not until that night. In the upstairs hallway, beside a bookshelf, a seam appeared, like the outline of a doorframe that hadn't been there before. He ran his hand over it. Wood. Cold. Solid. And then, as if waiting for his touch, a handle materialized. Black metal, ornate and old-fashioned. His breath caught. He didn't open it. Not yet. He backed away and spent the entire night in the living room with the lights on. In the morning, the door was gone. But now, every night, it returned. Always just as he turned out the lights. Vincent began hearing voices through the door. Not words, just sobbing. A woman crying quietly, sometimes begging in a whispery voice he could barely understand. He pressed his ear to the wood, trying to catch fragments. "It's not real," she whispered one night. "It's not a place." Sleep became impossible. He was spiraling, bags under his eyes, constant jumpiness, the urge to leave. But something in him wanted answers. He tried recording the door with his phone, but the footage was always just static. Finally, he broke. One stormy night, lightning flashing against the windows, Vincent grabbed a flashlight and turned the knob. The door opened into pitch-black space. Not darkness, space. Like light was being eaten. The beam from his flashlight didn't penetrate it. It simply vanished, like it had been cut off mid-air. His breath fogged in the cold that poured out. Then, he heard his voice again, deep inside, but it was weeping, begging. He shut the door and locked it, nailed boards across it, screwed it shut. But each night the boards were neatly stacked beside the doorway. The door always back. His voice calling to him, now louder, more desperate. "It's not me. It's what's left." Vincent called his sister in a panic. She came over the next morning, found him curled in a corner, shaking, mumbling about being hollow. He looked thinner, not just sickly, but like something had been taken, from him. His sister stayed the night. She didn't believe in any of it until 3:13 a.m. when the house woke her with a soundless pull. Like the air had changed pressure. She followed the hallway, saw the door, heard her brother's voice from inside. She turned to flee, only to find Vincent standing behind her, wide-eyed, whispering, "I didn't call you." They tried to leave. Car wouldn't start. Phones went dead. GPS showed them still in the house, no matter where they walked. The door, now in every room. Sometimes on the ceiling, sometimes behind the fridge. Always there, always silent, waiting. Then came the night where Vincent stopped speaking, just stared. She found pages of scribbled words. The door isn't a place, it's the shape of absence. On her final night there, she heard Vincent sobbing behind the door, his real voice, not the version that stared blankly. She opened it. There was a void, a perfect, soundless hollow. Inside, dozens of Vincent's faces turned to look at her, all weeping, all begging. The door closed behind her. The version of Vincent outside made himself coffee and smiled at the morning light. It started with a sound, a soft humming vibration that came from beneath the floorboards of Graham Whitmore's country home. He had just moved in 3 weeks prior, a newly single man in his late 40s, seeking a quieter life after a bitter divorce. The house stood on the edge of a near-forgotten patch of land, surrounded by endless fields and a dense line of trees that seemed to lean a little too far inward, as if guarding something. The hum wasn't mechanical. It pulsed, like a distant heartbeat. Graham first noticed it one night while reading in the living room. At first, he thought it might be his tinnitus acting up, but the sound didn't come from within. It came from below. He stood still, pressing his bare foot against the hardwood. It was real, subtle, yes, but undeniably there. Curiosity turned into obsession. Every night the hum returned, deeper and stronger, as if something was waking up. Graham tried to ignore it, but the pull was relentless. He searched the blueprints of the house and found nothing unusual. No basement, no cellar. But that only made the noise more maddening. He started tearing up parts of the floor, following the sound like a compass needle locked on a magnetic secret. After a week of digging and sleepless nights, he uncovered a trapdoor in the center of what used to be the dining room. It wasn't on any diagram. Covered in a thick layer of dust and nailed shut, it gave off a faint warmth when he touched it. Against his better judgment, because some part of him knew he shouldn't, he pried it open. The stairs were old, carved straight from stone, descending into a darkness that didn't feel empty, but full. Too full. He took a flashlight, but it flickered even with fresh batteries. Still, he went down. With each step, the hum grew clearer, more layered, like a whispering chorus. Some voices were low and guttural, others childlike and weeping. They weren't speaking words, but they meant something. He felt it in his bones. The stairs led to a single room. It was circular, the walls lined with carvings he didn't recognize. In the center was a hole, not a well, not a tunnel, just a void. A perfect circle of pitch-black nothing. Graham felt his breath catch as he stood over it. It didn't reflect light. It swallowed it. He dropped a rock into the hole. There was no sound, no impact. It was like the rock never existed. He leaned in slightly, just enough to hear the whispers more clearly, and that's when the world tilted. He stumbled back, heart racing. Something had whispered his name, clearly. From that moment on, the hole was all he could think about. He stopped eating. He stopped answering calls. His sister visited once and said he looked haunted. She didn't stay long. Graham started to hear the whispering even in the daylight, upstairs, in the mirror, in the rustle of wind. Then came the dreams. Night after night, he dreamt of falling into the hole, endlessly, not screaming, but listening to secrets no human should ever hear. He'd wake up gasping, convinced something had followed him back. One morning, he found muddy handprints on his bedroom door, from the inside. They were small, child-sized. He didn't remember opening the trapdoor again, but the hum was louder now, almost jubilant. He called a priest, not for an exorcism. He didn't believe in that, but just to have someone else see it. The man refused to go down the stairs. Said the air turned thick as syrup halfway down. He blessed the house, then left in a hurry, muttering Latin under his breath. That night, Graham saw someone standing at the edge of his bed. A child, pale, silent, no eyes, just smooth skin where the eyes should be. It didn't move, it didn't speak, but he understood. The hole had opened, not just below the house, below him. He tried to seal the trapdoor. He poured cement, bolted steel, even blessed the space himself with a trembling hand and stolen holy water. But every morning, the door was open again, and the hum was evolving. It wasn't just sound. It was emotion, despair, hunger, welcome. Neighbours started avoiding the property. One man's dog refused to step past the fence. Birds stopped perching on the roof. Then the power went out, permanently. Electricians found nothing wrong. They didn't come back. Graham set up cameras. Every night, the feed turned to static at exactly 3:13 a.m., then resumed at 3:33. In those 20 minutes, the footage always showed the same frame, the open trapdoor, and movement. Impossible to track, just a blur, circling the void. Then one night, he saw himself on the screen, just standing at the edge of the hole, motionless, except he had been in bed. He watched the footage 100 times. He never remembered being there, but each time his figure got closer to the edge, and it was smiling. He wrote letters to friends warning them not to visit, told them he was sick, unstable, dangerous, anything to keep them away. He stopped sleeping altogether, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw it. The hollow. It wasn't a hole in the ground anymore. It was inside him. One night, he vanished. No signs of struggle. The trapdoor was open. The flashlight was at the top of the stairs, still on, and the only thing left in the room was a whisper, caught faintly on a camera's dying battery. "Welcome back."